Welcome to the Sikh Meets World podcast. My name is Sean Guman, and I'm with my co-host, Gerwin Singh. And we are joined today with an illustrious guest, a retired colonel in the U.S. Army, the highest-ranking Sikh to have served active duty with a turban, an author, and father to 3 accomplished kids, including a Rhodes Scholar and a newly commissioned second lieutenant in the United States Air Force. Retired Colonel G.B. Singh, thank you so much for being here.
Well, thank you for inviting me.
So what was it like for you to watch your daughter, Naureen, follow the same career path that you did and the struggles and the triumphs in following that path?
I think it's a great news. So I actually really feel very proud of it. And I know it wasn't easy because it took her about 2 to 3 years at least to get the paperwork going and eventually for the U.S. Air Force to accept after the final interview. And I know it's not easy. It's not easy to be commissioned as an officer.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, it's not easy. It's quite competitive. So my answer again, is I'm quite proud of this achievement.
Absolutely. It is an incredible achievement, and we've been amazed to get to know her, understand her story. We often ask our guests to share their American story. Can you share your American story with us? Yeah,
I was born in India, raised there for the first 21 years.
Where in India?
In New Delhi in Punjab.
Okay.
Both. My father was in the central government, Air Force civilian in New Delhi.
Oh, okay.
So many years of my life, I lived in New Delhi, and of course, significant chunk also, I lived in Punjab.
Mm-hmm. Where in Punjab?
Amritsar and a few other places.
Okay.
So, but by 1976, I had finished my degree and landed in Chicago. At that time, my parents were already here. Much of my family members were already there, okay, at the time. So essentially, I went home and came to another home. And America being so different, I began to learn new things. There's always like a culture shock, and there's just so many new things. Began to learn a lot of new things. But again, at the time, by 1977, early, I guess, somewhere around, I got very lucky. I got admission at the University of Pennsylvania, Philadelphia. So I ended up at UPenn as a student, postgraduate student in School of Dental Medicine. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Again, this is something brand new to me because I thought I knew good stuff from India, but then of course I'm learning something new here.
Sure.
And so the doors are opening up.
Right.
Okay. The new things, new horizons, new people. There was one gentleman at the time with me, and he, right soon thereafter when we graduated, his paperwork were already to join the U.S. Army. He joined. So every Saturday morning, remember this is the time there was no cell phones and internet and all that. So Saturday morning, of course, we had the rotary telephone.
Yeah.
So Saturday morning, he would call me. He wake me up at 9 o'clock. And I knew it always Saturday morning, 9 o'clock, that's the guy who's going to be calling. And he will pamper me. He will cajole me. He'll tell me all these beautiful things in the Army. And then he will push me that I should also join the Army. And, I had absolutely no desire. This idea was not even there that I come all the way from India.
Yeah.
And I want to join the Army. That just was not there on the radar. But anyway, cut it short, but the gentleman, a friend of mine, he was quite successful. And I could, even when I tell him not to bother me, he would still do that. Eventually, I said, listen, don't bother me. Let me go next week. I'll go. It was it wasn't that far up from downtown Philadelphia. UPenn is on the west side. I said, let me go there. He gave me the address, go to the recruiting station. I'll go and sign the papers. So I said, this would be the end of it because I was 100% sure Army would never take me.
Mm.
Okay, I was 100%. I was not a U.S. citizen.
And you were a Sardar right then too, right?
I had a turban and a beard. And of course, my original dental degree was from India, which was not acceptable. Okay, so there were three big things that were against me. But nonetheless, I thought, I just wanted to tell my friend, listen, I did my work, so don't bother me on this thing anymore. So I end up in downtown Philadelphia, and the first thing I see, a recruitment station for Navy, U.S. Navy. Before I could get to the next door would be the Army. So I said, you know what? Let me go into the Navy first. So I walked to the Navy recruiting station, and I said, I would like to join. So the gentleman, he was the recruiting guy over there, some petty officer. I can't remember his name, but nonetheless, he started to take my information, and he was quite impressed. He said, listen, this is good. Then he looked at my size, 5'4", and I think I was barely about 100 pounds or something like that. And he liked that. He said, you know what? We need people of your size in submarine force.
Interesting.
So would you like to join the submarine? And,
that's scary.
In my mind, I said, I just thinking, and all of a sudden I said, yeah, I'll do that.
That's awesome.
Wow. One of the most difficult assignments in the military.
It is. But the gentleman, he liked my qualifications. He liked this body structure. He says it's perfectly fit for submarines. So cut it short, then he started to talk to me about my turban and a beard. And I told him who I am. And I said, somebody told me that in the Navy, you guys allowed the beard and also some mustache. He said, yeah, we did that. But just recently, the Navy got away from it. I said, okay. But he said, do me a favor. Can I send your paperwork to the Department of the Navy, which would be in the Pentagon? And if they say yes, would that be okay? I said, yeah. But then he said, you know what? I don't think they would do that. But I'll try my best. But he's almost sure that they're not going to allow me to walk in like that. Anyway, I came out of the office, and right next door is the Army. And I walked right in. So now here is a different atmosphere. I think this is about, I can tell you, this is 1978. Probably November, December, somewhere around that. I'm not 100% sure. And so we started to talk about, and then he said, you know what? Yeah, I would like, you would really like to come in as an officer. I said, yes. And he said, no, I do a lot of work on the enlisted, but there's another gentleman who actually does the officer. And I forgot the guy's name. He called me up. The gentleman came and introduced himself. And we just kick off right from there on. And I filled all the application. In fact, that first day when we met, we went out for dinner. He really wanted to talk to me. And we chatted. Now, at the time, I didn't realize, I thought we were developing a sort of a friendship. But no, we had a nice chat. He really wanted to know my experience in India, how I came here, what do I do, all that stuff. Cut it short, within a week, we met again, and he has filled all the applications, the whole packet was ready. And then he said, you know what? I got to be honest with you. He said, I think I have recruited a lot of officers. Well, you are the most unique person I've ever met. With your background, I have given the highest recommendation to the Pentagon to have you.
That's amazing.
So, but then we did talk about the turban and a beard. We did talk about the other no's in my case, and that was I'm not a U.S. citizen. And I think the requirement at the time was to be an officer, you need to be a citizen. And then, of course, my degree, even though I had a certificate postgraduate from UPenn, but my basic degree was from India.
Right.
But I mean, he also thought that it looks like, it's not going to go any further. But nonetheless, and that's the way I thought it, so same way. But anyway, few weeks down the line, I got a call from him. Now this is the officer of the U.S. Army who's calling me, my recruiter. Okay, he's no more enlisted. He's an officer. He's captain. I forgot his name now. So he called me up. He said, "Listen, there seems to be some interest in you. They know that you're not a U.S. citizen because it takes 5 years to be immigrant here, and then you apply for it. And I just had barely, just even less than 3 years, something like that. So can you go to the INS immigration office?" This was right in downtown Philadelphia. And they told me a name of the form is called Intent to Become a U.S. Citizen. Can you fill that form? And what other paperwork is done? Get that done, get a copy, and give it to us. So in my mind, I said, oh, gee, I thought they were going to say no to me.
Yeah.
So I go up there, I got the paperwork done. It didn't take that long time, and I gave it to the recruiter, and he passed on to the Pentagon. Now, at the Pentagon, you have a Department of the Army, which would be called DA, Department of the Army. They are the ones who are really checking my case, okay? So the Department of the Army is also checking my case, my file. Plus, you have the U.S. Army Dental Corps also looking at my record. So there are two different groups within the Army are going through my record, okay?
Just for clarity's sake, you're going to join the Army and be a dentist in the Army. Is that?
That's right.
Correct?
That's right.
Okay.
But there are two things. One is the DA and one is the Dental Corps.
Got it.
There are two decisions have to be made at that level, okay? So I sent that intent to become a U.S. citizen. So again, in my mind, I'm thinking I'm done. I don't think these guys will go any further, okay? Then I began to hear that there's more interest. They want to talk to me more about my career and this and that. By this time, they also got my letters of recommendations and all that stuff. Eventually, the word I got was that there's a big tussle going on within the dental corps. And that is the senior officers at the corps level, at the dental corps level, they are having issues whether to take me or not.
Do you think it's because of your turban?
That was a big deal. And that was the biggest of all. And then, of course, my degree. My degree was not from the U.S.
Could you tell us what their argument against you wearing a turban was at that point? Did they ever explain?
Their biggest argument was simply they had no idea what this is all about. By this time, they heard the word Sikh, but they really have no idea what that is, okay? But then by this time, they also knew that there's a regulation within the Army.
Right.
It's called AR, which it has some 4 or 5 points where it would allow a Sikh to join. Okay? But Army had never allowed anybody. It had never given that permission to anybody. So I'm essentially the first one who's making a traction here.
Did the Army not have any institutional knowledge from World War I or from, I'm sure the Army in all branches of the military probably work closely with the British government.
That's
British
true.
Army.
You're looking at the last war would be the Second World War.
Yeah.
But the people at the dental corps level, they just didn't have that background. Okay?
I see.
So these were all after the Second World War people. Okay?
I see.
Now, at the DA level, the senior officers, of course, because they studied a lot of history of the wars, they were aware of the Sikhs. Okay? But at the dental corps level, that was not the case. Cut it short, eventually now I found that out later on. Okay, so I'm just telling you. Later on, I heard the 3 senior officers, these were all colonels, they had to vote on my case. Should I be accepted or should I not be? 2 of them voted for me and 1 of them voted against me. Nice. The majority won. So there was a green light from the corps level, dental corps level. Okay?
What happened in the Navy, by the way? Did anything happen with that? Did anything happen?
Well, yeah, in the meantime, I did get a call from that recruiter. He said, no, they're not going to make any exceptions.
All right.
So that was gone. Okay.
You dodged a figurative bullet, I would say.
Well, whatever. Okay.
I mean, the 80s were coming. Cold War was coming. So
yeah. So now you back to the Army. So found that out again. The Dental Corps accepted my degree with a postgraduate certificate from UPenn. That's what I got. And I told you later I found that out there were 3 colonels who had to vote on it. 2 of them went for me,
right.
1 against me. Got it? Now,
yep.
We'll get back to that one, how that happened. So anyway, now the third issue was my turban and a beard. Okay? What do we do with this one?
Right.
So the Dental Corps decided, you know what, that issue has to be decided at the DA level, Department of the Army. The Secretary of the Army, the Chief of Army Staff, the big guys, they have to decide on that particular issue because I'm supposed to be joining as an officer, so I'll be wearing a uniform. So that decision has to be made over there. So anyway, in the next few weeks or few months, I can't even remember now, but now we are in 1979, okay? Well into 1979. Eventually, I got a telephone call from the recruiter that he got the word from the DA that DA would like me and him to go together to Fort Dix, New Jersey. Fort Dix, New Jersey at the time was an active infantry base in New Jersey. Okay, and very active when it comes down to line officers, the war fighting. So they have constituted a board which will interview me, probe me, and then if the board says okay, then that might open the door for me. Okay. So again, in my mind, I didn't have the guts to say no. I say, yeah, this whole thing was an accident, so to speak. I didn't want to join, you know what? But I just could not say no to anybody.
You had low expectations.
But I could have said no, but I never did.
Yeah.
But anyway, me and the recruiter, we ended up Fort Dix, New Jersey. There were 3 or 4 officers, if I remember. One was definitely major. The rest were captains, and then there was a secretary. They invited me in their office over there in the conference room. We chatted a little bit. They said, listen, we got some questions here. They also had the Army regulation with them that under these circumstances, if I fulfill those requirements, I can be accepted into the military, okay, into the Army. So anyway, they questioned me for about an hour or less, maybe 45 minutes to an hour. They asked me anything and everything they could ask me about Sikhs, Sikhism, my standing on issues of war, if I was a conscientious objector, and I mean all sorts of things they asked me. And on the issues of Sikh and Sikhism, I could only answer what I knew. Coming from India, my knowledge was quite limited. Okay, but they did ask me about Kada. They wanted to ask me about case, and all sorts. Anyway, so then they said, "Would you please go outside, have a seat out there? We will make a decision among ourselves, and then we'll come over."
Did they ever ask you to cut your hair or beard?
No, not at the board. No, not when I was sitting they never did that. Okay. So about 15, 20 minutes, I'm sitting out in the hallway. Major comes out. And of course, I stood up. He shakes hand with me. He said, we have decided our unanimous decision that we'd like you to be a fellow officer in the U.S. Army. Okay? So it was a high five type moment, okay?
Yeah, sure.
In my mind, I said, wait a minute. This is not something to be, I wasn't expecting this. But then he said, there's one more thing. This recommendation has to be approved by the commanding general at Fort Dix, who's a 2-star general. If he approves it...
How many approvals?
There's just a million. You got to understand, this was no easy job. And especially for me with a turban and beard, this was even more complicated. This is an infantry post. You got an infantry major general over there. He ain't going to take me in. Are you kidding? Anyway, again, in 2 weeks, my recruiter called me up. He said, listen, you got a good news. I said, what? He said, the general signed it. I said, what? Yeah, general signed it. I got the paper in front of me like that. I want you to come right now in my office. I want to give you, administer oath to you. You will be, today you'll get your oath and the orders are on the way. Just like that. Okay? Now, cut it short, I can give you the name of the gentleman, the Major General. His name is Robert Sennewald, Sennewal. That name will pop up later on, okay?
All right.
You got it? So Robert Sennewald, General Sennewald is the one Major General who signed the paper. Anyway, so I go up there, I get the oath, and I said, the orders should be there any day, get ready. Now, keep in mind, by this time, nobody in my family knew about it. My parents did not know, my relatives, nobody knew that this stuff is going on, okay, in Philadelphia. So first time I end up calling home in Chicago area and told them. And of course, nobody was happy to hear this. I'll be honest with you.
They thought you were going to be a dentist.
Well, yeah, they thought I would
be in the military, though.
And open up practice, all that stuff. And, I feel bad too. I feel bad too because this was not something I had planned. It's just one of those things happened, okay? Now, I have to get ready, get everything done, and get ready for basic training. And cut it short, I left my apartment. I put everything in my car, parked my car somewhere in a friend's house, and take an airplane and end up at the.
How old were you at this point?
About 20, just 23.
Wow.
Okay. Yeah, and 23 or right at close to 24, maybe. Okay, somewhere. And so I ended up at this base, and I don't think they were aware of me coming there. I think they thought it would be like any other officer coming in for basic training. Okay?
They were in for a surprise.
They were for a surprise, and so was I. And there was quite an uproar at the time. Wow. Yeah, it was really quite an uproar. Who is this? Okay? Everybody from the post commanding general over there all the way to enlisted. I mean, there was a huge surprise, and much of it was also uproar. What the hell is going on in the army? Why this is going on? Why? Okay, it was like that. You could visibly see that a majority of the people were against it. Okay.
Oh, wow.
Okay. So again, I am there. I had the orders. I said, I had the orders. Now, cut it short, my orders also said that from there onward, I'm going to go to after the basic training, I'm going to go to Fort Knox, Kentucky, as my first duty station. But there was so much uproar, and a whole bunch of folks had called the DA. Later on, I found that my orders for the Fort Knox got canceled.
Wow.
Yes. And
that is crazy.
Okay, so I said, well, what do I do now? It's about, don't worry, they're gonna finding another place for you, and you'll get your new orders.
Wow.
But the good thing was, I was open about it. Nothing really brought me down, so to speak. But I'm going through this new phenomenon, new experience in my life. And a few weeks later, I got the word that there's new orders. I'm heading to Washington, D.C. I said, what? Yeah, they want you to over there nearby, so they keep an eye on you. Okay, so instead of going...
There's another bullet, didn't have to go to Kentucky.
Exactly. And in a way, that was a blessing. That was a blessing. I ended up in D.C. But let's stop right here as an answer to that question. And if that something comes up as a follow-up, we'll talk more about it.
All right.
Okay.
I find it fascinating they had such a hard time with you just because you looked and presented different than, I ever heard stories about the Vietnam War towards the tail end of the Vietnam War.
Right.
They were having a hard time recruiting people, and they were making compromises left and right in terms of who went into the military because no one wanted to fight for what was slowly becoming a lost cause.
Well, that's true.
And you're only a few years removed
that's right.
from that situation.
Yeah.
So the level of stringency in a situation where the military was begging for people just a few years ago, and maybe really, quite frankly, pulling from the bottom of the barrel, is pretty shocking.
Well, I'll give you a little bit. I did meet a couple of Sikhs who had served 1 year in Vietnam, even with the turban, as enlisted.
Oh, wow.
They got their green card, because that was a requirement at the time. You go there, you serve 1 year, you get your green card, and by the time they come back, they're out. Got it? So my situation was different because this is like 3 years after Vietnam War, okay, ended. And I'm coming as an officer, which is a different category. They look at things differently, okay? And they had never done that before to anybody. Got it? So anyway, let's move on to, and if we come back as a follow-up to what happened, we can talk about it.
Yeah. I want to go, before we get into your narrative and story from the actual military experience or U.S. Army experience, tell me about why being a U.S. politician didn't work out.
Okay, all right, okay. From Washington, I served 3 years and I got orders to go to Oklahoma.
Okay,
Fort Sill, which is the home of the field artillery base. But there's where I had decided, because, my deal was never I'm going to go stay in the Army I just wanted to spend some time and get out. But by this time, there was a perceptible change in me. And that is, I said, you know what? The best thing to do that would be become a politician or become a member of the House of Representative. Mm-hmm. And wouldn't it be great go back home, Illinois, and go for an election? But again, my knowledge of politics and knowledge of American institutions was really very minimal. Mm-hmm. So I said, let's go and at the University of Oklahoma, let's start that program where I do my master's degree, okay, which with a political science, that kind of stuff together, okay? And that's really how the idea was, that I'll finish my tour here, and from here I'll get out and go back Illinois. That was the whole idea.
Gotcha.
But then in the program at the University of Oklahoma, I came across a professor who was the chairman of the Department of Political Science, Professor Stanley Vardes, who was a consultant to President Reagan. By this time, President Reagan is in the White House. And somehow we clicked really nice. And all of a sudden, he saw something in me that I never thought I'd have it. And that was my unique perspective at looking at ideologies, political ideologies, and how they shape. And I became a student of communism. Of course, keep in mind, coming from India, communism was quite heavy. So I began to learn that all the stuff I learned in India just was not right. I began to learn new things about communism, the real stuff. Anyway, at this moment, again, in my mind, this stuff is there that I'm going to get out. But I ran into more stiff opposition at this new post against me. There were a number of people, not all again, keep in mind, there were a number of people now who were with me, but then there were also people who wanted me out. So I ran into that opposition. And once I ran into that opposition, I decided, you know what? Not a bad idea if I stay in. Not okay.
It's a good reaction.
Not a bad idea. And then came 1984, the incidents in Punjab. And for some reason, I can share that with you. There was an officer over there at the field artillery who had a background in intelligence, and he was still quite And he was quite friendly to me. And then he shared with me some of his opinions about Operation Blue Star.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to share them here with you. And I'm looking at his face. I say, are you kidding me? He said, no. This is real stuff going on behind. Now, I'm already by this time studying communism. I'm already well into this kind of stuff going on, okay? And then my professor is now taking me into the outer corridors of Hinduism. He wants because to understand India. At the time, Indira Gandhi, he thought Indira Gandhi was a communist. So anyway, I got into all that stuff. And what result was that in my mind, I said, you know what? Let me stay in the army more. Okay? The idea of leaving at the time, I kind of put it on the shelf, and I said, let's stay and make a career as much as I can. That's really what happened. Okay.
It seems like you kind of fell into the army. It was not something, obviously, as you mentioned, that you planned, but you kept finding things within yourself to keep continuing. And what was that? Like, what was telling you and motivating you to say, okay, I just got to give it a few more years. Okay, now, you know what, maybe this should be a career. What was motivating those feelings? Well,
I just shared with you a few things that happened, but on the positive side of it, I came across some of the most intelligent people, senior officers you can imagine. And through them, I began to learn the leadership, the history, ideologies, the history of the subcontinent, history of the Cold War, the Soviet Union, the wars. I began to go into all those areas, and of course, not to overstress the role of religions, the role of politics, the role of constitutions, the critical thinking, and it just kept going and going and going. Those things really motivated me because I'd never come across anything like that outside. And those people, they recognized that because, I come from the East, these people had not. So I would bring in new perspective from the East and add on to the equation. And they loved it. They absolutely loved it. So the relationship began to grow. Okay, a lot of these people, I mean, really senior people, they said, hell, we need this man. We like it, love it. Okay, so that was an encouragement from the other side for me to continue to move forward and begin to learn a hell lot of stuff from these people. That was the motivation.
Yeah, tell us what you did. Like, tell us a little bit about what your military career looked like, and if you can share some of your experiences.
But look at it this way. I was a part of the U.S. Army Dental Corps. The ranking structure and move on to promotions, it was all through that. But by the way, I want to let you know, at that duty station, I came across, remember that I was telling you those 3 colonels who voted? One of that colonel made it now general. And he began to treat me like his own son. So one day I ran into him and I said, sir, can I ask you a question? Yes. I had all the negative things attached to my record. I'm not a U.S. citizen. I have a foreign degree. And of course, I got a turban and a beard. What was in it that you went in to decide to have me in? I just want to know what was going on behind. And he opened up. But bottom line is that the bottom line was, he said, you remember those letters of recommendations from UPenn? I said, yeah, I remember them. He said, we don't get letters of recommendation like that. That's what really got us that we need this man. That's what happened to us. Now, he's talking from the Dental Corps level, okay? Now, many years later, I'll tell you more about General Sennewald, who became 4-star. Okay, retired and moved into the CIA. But anyway, that's separate.
Did you feel when you were in the military, because our community has such a long history of military service, almost since the beginning, not quite the beginning, but almost the beginning. And did you feel when you were serving what probably, not even probably, was and is the most powerful military in the world, did you feel a kinship with all the Sikhs that had served in the military for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years? And did that motivate you as you were going through your training?
Again, I was aware of the Sikh history, not in that details. Okay, I'll be honest with you. You look at me. I don't look like one of those great Sikh soldiers. I really don't.
You look pretty good.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. But while in the military, I would come across senior officers who had known the history, and in fact, at the time, I even came across people who had served in Second World War. They were getting old, and they will sit with me and they will share with their knowledge of the Sikh soldiers. Okay, one of them even had served for General Eisenhower.
Wow.
And then he started to tell me how General Eisenhower liked Sikh soldiers and this and that. I mean, I began to learn things that I did not know. Again, from a soldiering perspective, this is where I began to look into the Sikh history, began to learn Sikh ideology. What was so unique about the Sikh gurus that they turned the untouchables, mainly the untouchable communities and the Shudra communities, into great warriors, the great leaders? So that was another phenomenon I began to learn as a kickoff from all the other stuff I was learning. Okay, but that's a whole separate stuff. What I learned, how I moved, having studied the religions and all that, I moved back to Sikh religion, Sikh philosophy, Sikh civilization, and especially the role of Guru Gobind Singh turned these people who were persecuted, slaves for centuries, into great warriors. How did that happen? And that history goes separate, okay? That's a whole separate phenomena. Whatever you guys want to talk about, we can talk about it. But it's a fascinating story that as I began to learn more into soldiering professionally, how I started diverting to the Sikh history.
So you traveled a lot in the military.
Mm-hmm.
What was it? Where did you go? What was it like every day to be in the military at the height of the Cold War? I mean, what about your work made you so beloved by your superiors? Because having the respect of generals, or particularly generals who become 4-star, is probably not easy.
Well, let me give you one thing is for sure. When it comes to my own profession, my corps, my dental corps, they are considered my record was probably the best one they ever had. It was that good. But then my other talents, other things that came in as a part of the officer corps, that came in handy because they were the people from the line officers and so many others were having a great input. And then the number of them will come and sit with me and begin to learn on the cultural issues and so forth and so forth. Anyway, I did travel a lot in the military, especially within the continental U.S. And then twice I was stationed in Far East, South Korea. And this is back again when I was there first time, the 4-star general in Korea, the head of the 8th Army was General Senewald. Okay, and we didn't get a chance to meet, okay? But I could see that name, and of course he heard about me coming. He knew. So, and then a few years later, I'm Lieutenant Colonel, and I ran into General Senewald. And by this time, he had retired and was in the CIA. And this colonel, he said, listen, I'm heading to D.C. I'm having a lunch with him. I said, could you tell him about me and talk to him? And I told the story, and he went and talked to him. He said, of course I remember him. Where is he? And he sent me his address. He said, tell him to write me a letter, okay? And by the way, General, I just checked 2 months ago, General Senewald was in 90s. He's still alive. He's right there in D.C. area, okay, in Alexandria. So I just want to give you an update that General is still alive there.
That's
and yes.
Did you have to, when you were in South Korea, did you meet Koreans and did they, that must have been their first time seeing someone with a pugady?
That was one heck of an experience. because early on, the first duty station when I had, Koreans had never seen a man like me, especially, with the body hairs.
Yeah, they have no, yeah.
So, and my turban and a beard, and they thought I was from Saudi Arabia and all sorts of Indonesia. I mean, also their knowledge was quite poor when it comes to geography. But the second time when I was there, this is during 9/11, a lot of young Koreans, their knowledge was pretty good, and a lot of them knew who I was.
Wow.
So there was a huge change between my first visit and the second visit there.
That's awesome. Were you married at this time? Like, what was?
Yeah.
Awesome. I have a question about 1984. That's also when the Army banned outward signs of faith. How did you overcome that, or what was the
Well, just a correction. I think that the ban occurred in 1982, if I remember.
82. Okay.
So, but again, it was a occasion. I was in DC at the time, and there was enough pressure being put on me to either shave and take the turban off, or I need to get out. So, but look again, I found that out. The new policy had a clause of grandfather. That is, those who are already in, they should allowed to serve. I was the only one, actually. So I remember there were two major generals, including the chief of the JAG Corps. It's supposed to be a highest ranking, the lawyer.
Mm-hmm.
They were telling me and some other that I have no choice but to shave or I need to get out. So I ended up fighting that case and I won. Okay. That was the beginning of the pressure, actually, to be very frank. Okay, that's when the pressure started to mount on me, and it continued for the next many years because I was all alone. Okay, and while there was a pressure being mounted, but then remember when I told you when I was in Washington D.C., the people that I served with and for, a bunch of them moved on to the Pentagon as senior officers, even generals. They were always there to protect me. Okay? That was my protection. There were people behind my back to make sure I stay protected, even with all the pressure being put on the other side. Okay? Just want to give you an update. Okay? So my job was to survive this and make a change from within. And as I gained the ranks, I began to see a change. There was a change, perceptible change from within. Okay, and by the time I retired, I could see a big change that I knew just a matter of time, that the huge opposition was just about to be melted away.
What was the rationale for the policy?
Well, again, the policy at the time, Secretary of Defense, if I remember, Caspar Weinberger, they were very, very ultra-conservative. They just did not like any change, so to speak, especially with an officer, okay? There was that opposition. And then you had a cultural opposition, the military history. U.S. military history is so different as opposed to Europeans, okay? And these people look at things from their angle and they say, well, we never given exceptions to this and this and that. And that would go through. And then there was a third one they were kept telling me, well, in America, we have almost close to 1,300 close to religious groups. And if all of these guys start to ask for exception, well, we're not going to give this. And then I began to learn how to counter these kind of things. First thing I would say, sir, as far as I know, Sikhs are the only people who applied for this exception. All these 1,300 that you're talking, I have no idea anybody applied. The majority of them don't even want to. So why bringing something else that really has no relevancy? Well, that kind of stuff started to move on. Then they came up with this idea of a gas mask. Okay? So I said, well, yeah, we have a responsibility of safety. Now, they were right from that angle because even the Supreme Court has given that authority to the military. For a safety reason, they can do these kind of things. Now I had to learn, okay, if gas mask is the issue and a helmet is the issue, well, let's go with the gas mask, because they said with a beard, you cannot make a seal. Okay? And that's a safety issue we cannot allow. So what I did was I started to experiment with gas masks, and I realized with my beard, if you look at it, I can make a seal right behind it. Okay? And I just had to experiment with the gas mask. I finally realized instead of small gas mask, all I needed is a slightly bigger size. And I can go behind my beard and make a seal. Bingo, it's done. And they will take me to the gas chamber, and boy, I'll walk at night.
You'll survive, yeah.
Okay, so that issue began to had that of a problem. Wait a minute, gas mask is not an issue. Oh, I'm beginning to experiment with that. Then comes the helmet. Okay, I said, well, what do we do? And that was another issue where I had to make changes there. At least, what do I do? I said, okay, I had a mini turban, and I began to experiment with the helmets. Okay, again, I found that out there are different sizes, and I began to realize there are sizes that may be fitting better underneath under the jura, So I began to experiment with those, and I said, you know what, bingo. I can take my turban up there. I have my mini turban there. I have my mask up there. I have everything. I'm ready to go and do my field trainings and so forth and so forth. I'll give you an example. Second time when I went to Korea, we had a 3-day exercise on nuclear biological warfare. 3 days out in the field, okay? And you know what? The first thing they asked, how are you going to do that? I said, don't worry. I'm ready for it. And it was a surprise to a whole bunch of people. Oh my goodness, this works. Oh yeah, it works. And I think that sort of a change, opposition began to dwindle.
Yeah, it seems like your tenacity and your creativity is probably what made you come into the Army in the first place. And so now they have to deal with you.
It began to change. And as I said, if you note, I'm a very open person. So you had people from all walks in the military would be able to come and talk to me openly. Intelligence, lawyers, you name it, line officers, historians. I mean, it was an occasion for them to come across a man who can talk at that level and actually end up teaching them. Okay? So it was a very unique experience for me. And here's something I learned from them. Actually.
You probably did more for Sikh awareness in 20 years of service than, all the things the National Sikh Campaign has done so far. But hopefully we'll get there. Also, well, you had spoke about how when you were retiring, the U.S. military and the U.S. Army in particular were changing significantly. Mm-hmm. Your daughter is joining a new U.S. military and Air Force, and a body that has openly said that they're willing to accept any person, no matter their articles of faith, which is, hugely progressive. It's a big win for our community. I guess my question for you is, how has the U.S. Army or the U.S. military in particular changed, and can you describe that?
Well, I retired in 2007, so it's about 13 years now. Okay. And I can say, at least while I was in the service, I knew of all the military services, the most conservative was Air Force. Air Force, you could not budge. I mean, it was that others may dwindle, fiddle with it here and there, but Air Force was the most conservative.
Wow, did not know that.
And now to see, and by the way, since I came to Colorado, I would run into Air Force officers right here when nearby, and we will talk about all that stuff. But cut it short, to see a change in the Air Force, it is mind-boggling for me at least, because I never expected that. I will see that in my lifetime. Okay, there's a big change going on in the Air Force to accept minorities, this is great. I understand Navy has changed the regulations. I also understand Marines have changed the regulations, but I don't know much about it. But definitely Air Force has, because I hear more news about it. Recently, I heard one of the American white Sikh gentlemen got permission into the special forces of the Air Force. There's only one unit in that, and here he is part of it. So that is, again, it really tells me that the doors are open, okay, and our youngsters need to move forward, take advantage of it.
And last couple of questions: what are your leadership lessons that you observed over your career in the military? And then finally, what is your advice to Sikhs that want to join the military today? Is someone that has joined the military, is someone that has parented a child that has joined the military, and actually, quite frankly, has also won the Rhodes Scholar.
Different daughter.
Different daughter, right? And how can young Sikhs continue to join and keep their articles of faith and keep the persistence and the ingenuity that you did in the face of all the obstacles that you faced?
Well, let me start with the second question that you did. As compared to when I went and the difficulties that I encountered, I think today the doors are open. I'll be honest with you. We don't have to knock at the doors anymore and try to bang on it. The doors are open. All you require is a young Sikhs, men, women, who want to serve and want to go in and take a shot at it. Go for it. Like Naureen did that in the Air Force. But at the same token, Army, Navy, Air Force, these institutions are open. Now, having said that, let me be clear. It's not that easy to join, especially as officer. The requirements are very stringent. But you know what? If you say I'm a Sikh, I got a turban and a beard, and the regulation allows it, there's the advantage that you have because your recruiter and the people above, they will be attracted to you. And if you got those good talents there, you can invite those people to be attracted to you. Because turban and beard offers one great advantage over somebody who doesn't have it. And that is you are a source of attraction. And if you got a magnet personality, you're going to attract that person. And the doors will become even more open for you. Now, once you're in, you will learn the leadership qualities. Tremendous qualities you will learn. Tremendous other issues you will learn. So whether you make it a career or not, it doesn't matter. But even if, let's say, you serve a few years and you come out, that experience, that maturity will come right through you.
I'm ready for Gerwin to join the military.
So
I'm too old now.
You will go through an experience that you will never go through another place. It's a very unique setup. Now, I went through it during the Cold War time. You understand? Extremely competitive, extremely in those days. Okay? And I'll be honest with you, I learned a lot. Mistakes I made, my seniors will come and put an arm on my shoulder and, you know what, guide me. He said, let's do this way. So you learn on the job, and you learn right on the ground what should be done, what is generally the right way of doing it. And then begin to learn, you know what, there may not be the right answer. You look everywhere, you look how to navigate through the mountains or through the valleys. You find a way how to do it. That opportunity you get to learn in the military.
I'm really interested in the leadership qualities that you've seen, and I'm sure a lot of people want to hear about.
Okay.
Things you observe from great leaders.
Okay. Let me tell you, in the let's go in the Army, okay? Army has devoted considerable money and resources in how to train new leaders. We have schools. Like as an officer, I went and attended those schools, and you begin to learn not only practical level, but even at the theoretical level, what it takes to be a leader. Then you begin to read examples of military great leaders. There's so many of them, and how they fought great wars. And not only they fought, they won. Then you begin to read the executive leadership. For example, our presidents, FDR, President Truman. Okay? How did these people, what military background they had that eventually set them up for great presidents. And it takes you even back to George Washington. How did that happen? How did he become a general? So there's so much of history and examples, which again, I brought you back. That whole knowledge took me back to Guru Gobind Singh. Let's take a new look over there. There's something we missed. The quality of gurus, how they turned these untouchables.
Sounds like a book to me.
Okay? Turned them into warriors, leaders. What happened? But you need that background, the solid background that I was able to gain in the military to make that switch to the Sikhs. There's so much, this is where you begin to learn that the role of Guru Gobind Singh as a leader. Now, as a leader, there is no parallel anywhere in the history of our human civilization. None. It does not exist anywhere.
One final question. Knowing you have two daughters, one is pursuing a path and has done a lot of advocacy work like the National Sikh Campaign, National Sikh youth program, and has done a lot of, and works with us. She's on our advisory board council. She's on our. Naureen is a close ally of ours and has continued to help us. And you have another daughter, of course, who's joining the military, and you have a son as well. These are all young Sikhs in America, young Sikhs in the world. What advice do you give to other young Sikhs to go out there and make an impact on the world?
Well, answer again, there's no cookie cutter here. Okay? Every example is different, but from every example you learn something. As long as you're learning and as long as you have mentors to guide you through, okay, you reach at a level in few years where you are independent thinker and independent leader. You reach a stage where you look at your surroundings and you say, what is the right way of moving forward? And I think our Sikh youth, children of the great gurus, children of the great warrior traditions, okay, children of great human rights campaigns, civil rights campaigns, okay, I think we are well poised to take advantage of all of that and move forward with that. Military, all I can tell you, because of our tradition is rooted in military, what happened, even though Sikh philosophy may be somewhat different, but it is part of our history. It comes in handy. It comes in handy. And this turban, if you know how to use it, it is a source of attraction. And you attract some people there that others cannot attract, you have an advantage. All you do is you learn those skills, how to attract people, how to move forward, how to exert leadership potentials there, leadership skills there. I mean, you can move forward with that kind of stuff.
Awesome. Well, I think that's a high note to end on. We really appreciate your time. This has been an honor to speak with you, to get to know you, hear your story, and we really appreciate it.
Thank you. Take care. Sat Sri Akal.
Sat Sri Akal.
Sat Sri Akal.
Hey everyone, thanks for listening. If you like the show, please rate and review the podcast on iTunes, subscribe to Sikh Meets World on your favorite podcasting platform, and share it with your friends and family. Stay tuned for our next episode, which comes out next month. And of course, be sure to check out the National Sikh Campaign website for more information.